Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Forum Focus. Our focus tonight: for millions of students and families, the university admissions process has become one of the most stressful and competitive moments in a young person's life. From rising application numbers to debates over fairness, testing, and even what colleges are actually looking for, and in some cases, the path into that higher education can often lead to people feeling confused and overwhelmed. Certainly, I know that very well as someone who is in grade 11, starting to think about that process. And joining me now is someone who knows that process much better than me. That is Harlan Cohen, a New York Times bestselling author and college success expert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Wyatt, it's great to be here with you.
Of course. So let's just kind of start out because, I mean, again, I mentioned there in the introduction, but I'm in grade 11 right now. And I want people who are watching this interview to kind of feel as if they are in the position of someone who's about to, go and apply to all of these universities, which for me will be next fall. And so I'm kind
Right.
of just curious from your perspective, what people in high school should be focusing on in order to kind of maximize their chances for success in this process.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And, there's this, I get a little triggered even with the question of, what can students do to increase their chances of getting into certain schools or have
Hmm.
an opportunity to do certain things? And it really feels like the universities have all the control over
Hmm.
this. And what I like to do is start with that first question and be like, Wyatt, do you want to go to university?
Yeah. Yeah. In my
I
case,
mean,
the
and
answer
that's
is
the
yes.
question. I
But
don't know if you do. So you
yeah.
you you do. Okay, so and it's really starting with that question of do you want to go? And
Hmm.
then the next question is like, what do you want? What do you want to get out of that experience? And it sounds like this is a very basic way of
Hmm.
approaching this, but the problem is so many students and parents are so focused on what the schools want, and we're in school having to meet standards. Teachers tell us what we need to do. It's
Hmm.
not necessarily what we want to do. There isn't, I don't know if you feel like you have a lot of freedom in your school. Do you feel like you get to choose what you want to do,
Yeah. I mean,
most of the time?
I'm a little bit different. So I go to an independent school. So it's like a boarding school and a day school. So I'm a day student there. But
Um,
so there is more freedom than would be kind of traditionally allowed by like a typical
yeah,
public school in Ontario in Canada, where I'm from. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point and certainly authenticity as well.
right. It's that part of like, what is it that you want, and what is it that you want to experience? And I think that starting with that question, because some people are like, I don't even know, or maybe they come from a family where that's just what they're told to do. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important to take ownership and to be able to answer that question and be like, yeah, I want to. And this is the most important part. It's not just about getting in. When I look at college success and I see so many students who have so many problems and they struggle in so many different ways, which is very normal. The problem is they're so focused on getting in, they don't focus on what happens the first 3 months or 6 months.
Hmm.
So when I'm coaching students and working with parents, it's not only where do you want to go, which to me at this point doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
especially if you're in 11th grade. It's what do you want to do that first 3 months? Where are you going to spend your time? Where are you going to sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work? And how can you start to think about this whole university experience based on the things that excite and interest you?
And I mean, you mentioned, and I mentioned before, kind of the competitive nature of some of these universities. And I think now, with a bunch of international applicants, with people in the United States, like Gen Z is in many ways very talented. And so I think it's kind of increased the
Yeah.
level of competitiveness. But what is behind the kind of skyrocketing numbers in terms of the level of applications that some of these schools, and it's not even just the elite Ivy Leagues anymore. I mean, schools like Georgetown, for example, the school I want to maybe think about, the number of applications that they're receiving has skyrocketed as well.
Yeah, well, just the way that students apply has changed dramatically. So it's a combination of the Common App, where you have students who are applying to 10 schools, 20 schools,
Right.
and 10 years, 15 years ago, those students wouldn't be applying to so many schools. So then what happens is the admission rates go down because the number of applications go up, but it's not necessarily the number of applicants, although last year was the peak year when it comes to at least students in the United States applying to college, and now there's an admissions cliff that's going to be progressing each subsequent year.
Hmm.
So the number one thing is like there's just more people applying, and the schools then are playing games where they do early decision, where
Yeah.
if you apply, you have to commit to go and to spend whatever it is they tell you you're going to spend, based on paying full price or maybe getting some merit aid or some other aid, but whatever it
Yeah.
is, that's what you pay. So between having the whole early decision where people are tied into an outcome, having more applications, and then there's also, just the prestige. And what we've learned through a lot of data is it's not where you go to school, it's what you do.
Hmm.
And that's really something that people don't understand. Students don't understand this. There are certain things you can do when you're at university that are going to help you to be more successful, but you can do those things at lots of different places. And given the world we live in now, you're like the best example because you could talk to anyone. Like have you have everything accessible to you.
Hmm.
And that's the same for most students. If you actually dream it up, there's a way to be able to find people who you can connect with,
Yeah.
which makes this an entirely different experience.
All right, we are going to take a quick break, and Harlan Cohen is going to come back with us right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Forum Focus. I'm joined once again by Harlan Cohen. Of course, he's a college success expert and a best-selling author with the New York Times as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here again.
Of course. Let's just go back to what we were talking about before the break. And one of the things that I was kind of struck by it with respect to what you mentioned and impacted by it was how students are now applying to universities and how, because the process has become so competitive, one of the things that has happened, at least in Canada, I don't know about in the United States as much, it has kind of made it so that there are much more kind of binary standards. And in Canada now, with respect to the university process, a lot of schools are just looking at the academics and they're kind of starting to forget about other aspects of the application. And so I wonder if you think there's a concern even that it can reduce the amount of kind of well-rounded students that are applying to some of these schools if the focus is just on getting the highest academic average possible.
I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, to me, and that's the reason I'm asking it is just because, like, I think grades in particular in a school like Canada, at schools in Canada, have become so
Yeah.
inflated, and it's so easy to get really good marks. And so I think, like, if you're at a school that doesn't inflate those grades by as much, all of a sudden you're at a disadvantage. Whereas if schools started to value kind of the importance of the extracurriculars, of the sports teams that you do, and all of these different things, then I mean, I
Yeah.
think it has you have better students at those schools. I mean, I don't think whether you get a 95 average versus a 98 average, that says a whole lot about you as a person.
I mean, I think that your perspective is really interesting to me because I wholeheartedly agree. And I have a real problem with schools using academics as really their first,
Hmm.
the first, the gatekeeping, because we live in a world where getting the answer right is not going to be as important as being able to work through a problem and be able to figure out how it works and to critically understand it and to be great at getting things wrong.
Hmm.
And this is where grades are not an accurate reflection, because if I'm somebody who struggles but then I get it right, well, the first half of the year, well, that grade's going to be lower. And then if I get an A then at the end of that term and my final grade's a B, then they're looking at me as a B student. But what I've done is I've been able to address a problem. I've been able to work through the challenges. I've been able to find people to help me. I've been able to find resources. I've been able to believe in myself. And
Hmm.
ultimately, those are the students who become leaders. And when you look at the students who change the world, and you look at the entrepreneurs
Hmm.
and the disruptors, and those people, most of them, and I can't give you a list, but I know the majority are not 4.0 students.
Hmm.
Uh, I know for me, I had undiagnosed ADHD, most of my life. I was like maybe a 3.0 student with gym and art. I was very lucky to have those. And I went to college, and I would I'd either get like a C, or once in a while I even failed stuff, or an A. Like I would do so like algebra, freshman year of high school. I failed algebra took it in the summer, got a 97%.
Hmm.
So it's like what happens is grades then become this reflection of self-worth and value, and it doesn't serve students because 90% of life at university happens outside the classroom. That's
Right.
what's so wild.
Yeah.
Up to that point, 90% of time is spent on academics. But when it comes to what happens and when students are there, it's entirely different. And that's where we run into so many problems because high schools are not preparing students for what's next.
Right. All right. We're going to take another break, and Harlan Cohen is going to be right back with us after this. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm here once again with Harlan Cohen, a college success expert. Harlan, we're talking a little bit about kind of the value of academics. And before the break, you were talking about how right now it seems almost as if academics define one's self worth. And I think for many young people, they very much agree with that. And they're finding it quite frustrating as they're starting to go about the process. I'm curious for your perspective, because this is something that we don't have in Canada, but that they have in the United States. And that's with respect to the SAT and just kind of the premise of standardized testing more broadly. I wonder, again, from your perspective, whether or not you foresee this as kind of a valid metric to test someone's academics abilities, to test someone's kind of worth to specific schools in general. And I mean, to a certain extent, it's nice because it kind of provides a level playing field for everybody. But as someone who's going through the process right now, it feels very kind of counterintuitive at times, studying for this one standardized test when I could be sitting here having conversations with people like you.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to talk to different people who have different viewpoints on standardized tests. I think a lot of the standardized tests, tricks, tips, ways you can, beat the test. A lot of times it's tied to students who have access to the resources to be
Hmm.
able to have people to tutor them, to help them. It's often tied to privilege more than it is to intellect and being a well-rounded person. There isn't anything I know on a standardized test that reflects a students' grit and their ability to bounce back. I know for me, you know, I think I got like a 980 on the SAT, and then I took an SAT prep class and went down 20 points. And for my ACT, I did really well. And it was not my ACT. I got very. I don't know if I got lucky. I always thought when I was smart, I was lucky because I grew up in a system where the people around me were higher achievers, but the things that I did very well weren't recognized as being worthy as noteworthy. And what's interesting, and this is a big part, Wyatt. This is why, like, you're going to be great. You're going to be phenomenal. I know you're going to be phenomenal because
Thank you.
what you do is, well, you're curious. You have this uninhibited curiosity where your curiosity overpowers your fear of taking risks, right? Because you're more focused on learning. And what's going on now, because of AI and technology evolving so quickly, a lot of the jobs that people who are really high achievers are aiming for, a lot of those jobs are going to change dramatically. And it's the ability to communicate. It's the ability to listen to feedback. It's the ability to problem solve and to connect and to be great at rejection and adversity and being a team player and knowing how to connect, understanding nonverbals. These are the things that matter. I'm working on a book about going from college to career, and it is the students who have relationships with their professors, professional relationships, obviously, and the students who are consistently putting themselves in rooms with people who are doing things they want to do and connecting with them in person that find more success.
And I mean, just to kind of conclude here, do you think that kind of moving forward, the kind of metrics that define whether or not someone gets into an educational institution could change? Because you mentioned AI, and to me, what that says is that kind of the way in which you assess people's thinking is going to change, and we shouldn't be assessing whether or not
Yeah.
people's thinking is valid when it comes down to things that
Yeah.
could be replaced by AI. So, do you think kind of again these institutions will be able to change those metrics?
Well, I think that, the test taking is a big business. So
Yeah.
no one's gonna wanna change it because it works and for them and it's, they're able to find success. I think the problem is gonna be when students, do not get access, when schools start to recognize exceptional students in different ways. I proposed to a few people that they save 10% of their class. These are the most selective schools, 10% of their class for students that are 3.0, let's say. And they reserve those spots for those students who have exhibited tremendous growth, ingenuity, creativity, have been able to be resilient, because it's those students who are going to model and be there for some of those other students who are so used to getting things right all the time.
Right.
And what we're seeing is employers are also more interested, and there's almost like a pushback when it comes to the highest achievers, because and it's not a fair assumption for all students, but they want people who can show that they can really work and get results and get through the tough stuff.
All right, we're going to take another break. Harlan Cohen is back once more after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm joined once more by Harlan Cohen, an author and college expert. So I kind of just want to conclude on a note with respect to, for any students who are watching, me being a student myself, and we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but just to kind of bring it back to this and how students can maximize their success when applying to various schools with respect to what is it that schools in the United States are actually looking for from students when they go and apply to some of these schools. And how do we make the process? Because I think what you have now, and something that's been frustrating me, even as a student involved in the process, is you have kind of a world where authenticity is not valued because people are doing things in an effort to try and get accepted into these schools, not because they actually care about it.
Yeah, if I'm a student going through this, I am going to spend very little time focusing on what a school wants.
Mhm.
Really, I would have a range of schools from those that are highly selective to those that are less selective, and I would really focus on people, places, and patients. And this is how I guide students. And I have all these videos on social media, and I do
Mm.
like a whole coaching course for parents and students. There are five big transitions that university students go through: social, emotional, physical, financial, and academic. This is the first year. The acronym is SEPFA. It's a ridiculous acronym: social, emotional, physical, financial, academic. And within that, when you're looking at college and you're thinking about what is it I want to do at university, you pick the two that are most important to you. Maybe it's academic, maybe it's social, and then you drill down to people, places, and patients. And this is before you've even identified one school. It's
Right.
where are the places I want to put myself, where I can sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work? Who are the people I want to surround myself with, making sure those people are going to be welcoming and they're going to include me and I'm going to learn from them. And how long will it take? One of the things I'm going to do another video about this when we're done with this is when you're looking at school, it's how how can you be uncomfortable there and be
Mhm.
okay? And students are like, why would I want to be uncomfortable? Because no matter where you go, it's difficult. Two-thirds of students feel lonely. That there's so many students who don't know how to find community. So when looking at schools, if you're focused on what do I want, that's why we started with that. And then it's okay, where are the specific places? Like you would gravitate towards Georgetown. You like to be places you want to be in DC. You want to be around a lot of people.
Mhm.
Georgetown has some really great mentors, professors, probably students. And then when it comes to clubs or organizations and ways to get involved, Wyatt, I would be sure that if you go to a place like Georgetown, how do you get involved? Because so many of these groups and orgs, they're so selective that sometimes fewer than 10% of students get access. So really understanding, because you might be better off at a different school that's a little less competitive, where you would rise to the top. You wouldn't have to spend so much time competing against other people,
Yeah.
and you can still have access to a lot of the same resources, and then go to a grad school if you chose to. Because it's like, it's not about the school. It's about you finding things that you align with, understanding if money is important, you find people who are doing what you want to do, made money.
Mhm.
Most students don't even think. You go to the career center. that first semester, that first year, and they're thinking, I don't even know what I want to do. Well, what you want to do is you want to build relationships with the people who can help you, to guide you to the right people, the right resources.
All right, we will leave the conversation there. Harlan Cohen, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great chatting with you.
It's great talking to you, and anything I can do, man, I'm more than happy to help. And I've done a bunch of work in Canada, and I'm a big fan. So hopefully I'll get
Thank
out
you
there
so
sometime
much.
soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, that's going to do it for Form Focus tonight. I really do think that it was an interesting conversation. And what I tried to approach this conversation with was less of the kind of serious journalist that I try to portray usually. And instead, in this case, really make it a personal conversation because I think there are a lot of young people, people in, Gen Z and my generation, who are struggling with the reality of how do they get into some of the schools that they want to get into, despite the increasingly competitive and overwhelming nature of many of the university application processes. And whether it's students who are looking to apply in Canada or students who are looking to apply in the United States, there are so many different kind of aspects to university applications now, standardized testing, but also the fact that so many international applications make it more difficult. You heard it from Harlan Cohen about kind of the common application, allowing people to apply to 15, 20 schools at once, which decreases the acceptance rate of some of these schools. So, a lot of kind of aspects that I approach this conversation with. I hope you took something from it. That's going to do it for Form Focus tonight. We'll see you next time.